Hello, ladies. Welcome to Homemakers Radio. I hope you get something done while you listen. Maybe I can keep you company. Maybe I can get you motivated if you want to get started. And I would like to start out by saying that we have had rain here in Oregon, quite a lot of it, and it smells really nice. There is no smoke, except for smoke is funny because it likes to find a pocket somewhere, like right near your front porch, or sometimes it'll be in a room or near a certain closet. So we do have a little of it. But outside is really nice. We're having our summer weather again. It's just beautiful here. The lawn is green, the sky is blue, and it's just wonderful. And during the time which we had so much smoke and we were indoors and it was very dark outside, I spent the time sowing, and I sowed all those pumpkins you see behind me because my other ones didn't grow very well. And today, before you get to work and get started on your home, I'm going to show you my teacup. You will see this one in Tea Time magazine sometimes because they've got one that they put in some of their autumn issues. And this is a leaf with a pumpkin-shaped cup on it. And this was, I'm using this because my dress just didn't have a teacup to go with it today that matched it. And so today I'd like to talk to you about getting yourself ready if you're having trouble. I know some of you maybe aren't feeling well, or you're tired, or you're just tuned in just to listen, and I understand that. But if you're having a hard time knowing where to focus and how to get started, I would suggest getting dressed, and for this reason, and that is that we should never play down the importance of the appearance and the importance of the feeling that getting dressed gives you personally. Now, of course, we're in an era where there are all kinds of opinions by so-called fashion experts telling women what they should wear and what makes them look younger or what makes them look a certain way. But I think in general, and for me, now that many of us are home now, I think it's important to wear something that you like, and it shouldn't be because you'll be successful in business or because you want to be taken seriously or anything like that. It should be something that perks you up enough that makes you want to do your work at home and give it a nice atmosphere and to have a good mood. So don't play down the importance of clothing and getting dressed. It has a profound effect on your mind. And so dress to put you in a good mood. And now we want to use it also as a motivation for homemaking. Now I would wear an apron over this. I just don't even feel dressed until I've got that apron on, and I try to have a clean one every day. It has 2 pockets in it, and the pockets are great because if I have to pick something up and I don't want to put it away right away, it goes in my pocket. If I have a list that I need to keep, an ongoing list, that'll go in another pocket. So that is one reason why I enjoy an apron so much. I'm not wearing it here, but I would cover this with an apron. There is nowhere to go, and we're not going to go anywhere fancy. So I'm wearing the clothes that I like in my home. And today I want to talk about how to keep your mind on being motivated as you clean house and as you get your home in order and as you homemake. So to keep your mind on an even level, you have to ignore what the world is telling you, what's going on in the world. You kind of have to ignore it because they'll have your emotions, especially the media, even the conservative media, even the religious media. Sometimes will have you just going back and forth, wondering what's going to happen. But you know, the beauty of being at home is you decide what's going to happen. You decide whether it's going to be a nice place or not. And one of the things that I've learned from my exercise classes that I do online. You know, I have my exercise clothes, and I go to my exercise room, and I turn on a video, and I try to keep up with the next one. Is that the teacher always says, this might feel a little, you'll be rotating your arms or something, and she'll say it's going to feel a little uncomfortable if you're not used to it, but learn to enjoy the result. And so this is the same with things in your home that you need to put in order. It's not always going to be motivating or pleasant, but you learn to enjoy the result. And one of the results that I just get such a delight out of is walking into that ultra clean, wonderful kitchen or bathroom and thinking, you know, someone cleaned cleaned up this room for me. This is my vacation home, and someone's fixed it up. It's the same with our bedroom and my little sitting room. Goodness sake, someone went in there and cleaned it up, and now I feel so special because it was cleaned just for me. And so if you look forward to it also, I think another great motivation for cleaning up is just the satisfaction of knowing where things are. If you're the one that's doing the cleaning, sometimes people want to help me, they want to come in and help me, but then of course I can't find anything when they're finished, and they cannot determine my personal interest in my things as to why I want it in a certain place. And so I think that it's the satisfaction of cleaning your own house, of doing your own thing, is knowing where it is and appreciating it, and having picked it up, put it away, dusted it off, whatever it is. And so it's harder to thrive in disorder, just as it's hard to thrive in a place where people are constantly criticizing, or they are constantly trying to analyze you and put you down. It's the same thing with a disorderly home. It's like a put down. It's just harder. It's the same with getting dressed. If you don't get dressed, it's like you've criticized yourself. And I know people who have lived on farms and homesteads in the olden days before the casual era came. They would not have ever lounged around in the clothes they slept in, ever. It was just considered it's inhuman. You just didn't do it. It was beyond your dignity, just beneath your dignity. And so they always got dressed, and your pajamas were your private clothes. No one ever saw those. Even in the family, you didn't kind of walk around into the kitchen in them, and it was different. It was so different. And we need to have that dignity restored back to home, because so many of you are home now, and you're going to spend longer hours at home. And if you want to make it tolerable, and not just tolerable, but wonderful, then you're going to have to keep your eye on getting dressed for the home. And so you dress, it's easier when you are in good health and you have a good mood and you have motivation. But if you don't, just getting dressed itself will change. Well, that will elevate your mood a little bit and change your motivation a little bit. You can't change what's going on in the world. It's crazy, isn't it? You can't change that craziness. You often cannot change your health either. Maybe you're overweight. It doesn't change overnight. And you can't change maybe a room you've gotten in over your head, and it's just gotten to be too much because there's been an upheaval in your house. Maybe it's been you've changed over some rooms, or you've moved in or something. But you can change. That can change, but it takes time. But you can, in just a few moments, change your clothes and change your mood, and it becomes so much easier to be motivated. So ladies, today I want to talk a little bit about some things that I have expressed here before. But what if you want to get into your kitchen and get your everything cleaned up in there, and your heart's not into it, and you just don't have the mood for it? What I would suggest is to think of something you'd like to do afterwards, kind of as a finishing or a reward afterwards. And of course, I've got my pile of reading material there that I always look forward to. I think, when I get this done, I'm going to sit down and go through that book that I got, or I'm going to go get the mail and read my mail. And sometimes even when I get a letter from someone, I'll save it till I've done a certain job. And so I wanted you to know about that. And go along while I'm talking. Maybe you can get a few things done. And so one of the things that I learned about in exercising is that it gives you more stamina. You think you're tired when you're finished, but it gives you a little bit more of a better outlook on life. It changes something in your mind. Exercise does. And the ones I do are easy. They're for women over 50. So one of the things that I like to do is get more gusto and more interest in my work at home by promising myself something that I would like to do afterwards, a project that I've been wanting to do. And I'd like to talk today a little bit about children's messy rooms. And the reason is because sometimes they can get in, it's easier for them to mess it up, is they can get in over their head, and I always liked to bail them out every now and then so they could watch me to see how I did it, to see what my technique was, and then I would talk and teach as I did it. And in order to do that, if you're going to be a good teacher and they're going to listen to you, you've got to be pleasant. And it'd be nice if you were dressed up too and had your apron on, uh, and uh, and acted pleasant about it, and told them how to approach a job that looks impossible. And I've told you about friends that I've had that have had to move, and they've moved into this really awful place and had to spend the first night in there, and how diligent these women were to get their family settled in there and at least clean up a certain area that they could sit in and be in, and how brave that was. And you can do that too with your home. And children's messy rooms, also, once you've cleaned them up and you've helped them to get started in some habits, you need to teach them to clean as they go. And that means that as they get dressed, then they put their night clothes away and they make their bed, and that way it's maintained, and that's called maintenance. And you can teach them that. And you've got the time now that you're home. Don't just leave everybody to themselves. Go and order their day sometimes, and just kind of walk around and make sure that they're doing this, and go on an inspection. And speaking of inspections, I found something from Booker T. Washington's book. Now, I've mentioned this book several times, and this is my copy here, but there is a copy that's better for children and for homeschool, and it's put out by Dover, I think, and it's called Up from Slavery by Booker T. Washington. And the reason that I'm so attracted to this book is because of the word up. And he was trying to get people who had now got some new freedom, and because they were no longer going to be dependent, and they had no home, and they were going to have to learn how to deal with employers or to create their own work, and it was going to be very hard, much harder than what they had been through, because they had to be independent. They had to think for themselves. They couldn't take their complaints to anyone. No one owned them anymore, and they had to learn how to get along in life. And so he was teaching them things like you would teach your children about cleaning their room. And Booker would go to he started a school called the Tuskegee Institute, and it was a boarding school as well. And he would have to go to the rooms of the students, and the students were anywhere from 15 to 45 years old. Everybody wanted to go to that school because it was designed to help them develop their own business, or learn to keep a job, or learn how to present themselves so that they could have work, and help them create industry in their lives. But he would go to inspect their rooms in the morning before their classes, and their rooms had to be, it was almost like military barracks. You went in and it had to be totally sanitary. There could not be anything out of place. There couldn't be a wrinkle in the bed, and when they stood there in front of him, they could not have spots on their clothing, and they couldn't have missing buttons. And so in a way, this is the way we have to treat children with messy rooms, especially older children, and teach them. My children had inspection. In a way, they inspected themselves. You don't have to stand over them all the time. Once in homeschool, it's sort of bred into them after a while, and they become where they're self-motivated, and where they are self-taught. They'll learn more about, they enjoy learning more about how to do something better. And they had a saying and a verse and a scripture that they would want to memorize before they came out of their rooms, and they would be saying it while they cleaned up their room or made their beds. And then after they used the bathroom, they learned to clean it up so that the next person that walked in couldn't tell that they had been there. And I always taught them about being a detective. Snoop around the house to see if you could detect if you've left anything, your shoes, your socks, a bag of this, or something to drink, or something laying around, and clean up after yourself so that no one can tell that you were there. And so anyway, I want to read a little bit about Booker Washington, because he was tremendously important in our homeschool because in a way he did what we were trying to do, and that was to bring our children up. And I love that word up, because we bring them up from primitive living to civilized living. And so you bring them up from kind of a babyhood to adulthood. And one of the things that he did was he had to go home for a while. He had to leave the institute for a while and go home because his mother had died. And he talked about how sad it is. He said it had been the bleakest moment of his life. And but he had to go home and take care of things at home. And then so he was away from the institute. It was Hampton Institute that he was attending and helping to develop his own institute, Tuskegee, from that model. And so I want to read. He had come home for a while from this school that he was learning in, and also trying to develop his own school. And so he was taking care of everything at home, and it had taken quite a while. And he said, at one time it looked as if I would have to give up the idea of returning to Hampton, but my heart was so set on returning that I determined not to give up going back without a struggle. I was very anxious to secure some clothes for the winter, but in this I was disappointed, except for a few garments which my brother John had secured for me. Notwithstanding my need of money and clothing, I was very happy in the fact that I had secured enough money to pay my traveling expenses. I want to just check my volume because several people have said that they can't hear me very well. Back to Hampton. Once there, I knew I could make myself so useful as a janitor that I could in some way get through the school year. Now he's going to school at a place called Hampton, and he's trying to develop his own school called Tuskegee based on what he has learned, how this is formed in this school. 3 weeks before the time for the opening of the term at Hampton, I was pleasantly surprised to receive a letter from my good friend Miss Mary F. Mackey, the lady principal, asking me to return to Hampton 2 weeks before the opening of the school, in order that I might assist her in cleaning the buildings and getting things in order for the new school year. This was just the opportunity I wanted. It gave me a chance to secure a credit in the treasurer's office. I started for Hampton at once. During these 2 weeks I was taught a lesson which I shall never forget. Miss Mackey was a member of one of the oldest and most cultured families of the North, and yet for 2 weeks she worked by my side cleaning windows, dusting rooms, putting beds in order, and what not. She felt that things would not be in condition for the opening of the school unless nearly every window pane was perfectly clean, and she took the greatest satisfaction in helping to clean them herself. The work which I have described she did every year that I was at Hampton. It was hard for me at this time to understand how a woman of her education and social standing could take such delight in performing such service in order to assist in the elevation of an unfortunate race. Ever since then I have had no patience with any school for my race in the South which did not teach its students the dignity of labor. You see, that's the way we are in a way. We're the lady of the house and we supervise, but we do a lot of the labor too. And the labor, I'd rather do some things myself, and I really enjoy them. During my last year at Hampton, every minute of my time that was not occupied with my duties as janitor was devoted to hard study. I was determined, if possible, to make such a record in my class as would cause me to be placed on the honor roll of commencement speakers. This I was successful in doing. It was June of 1875 when I finished the regular course of study at Hampton. The greatest benefits that I got out of my life at the Hampton Institute perhaps may be classified under 2 heads. First, he meant 2 headings, but that's the way they talked. First was contact with a great man, General S.C. Armstrong. I've read about him before in here, who, I repeat, was in my opinion the rarest, strongest, and most beautiful character that has ever been my privilege to meet. Second, at Hampton, for the first time, I learned what education was expected to do for an individual. Now, I did mention in my last video this false idea of education that evolved at quite a bit of time after this, that education was supposed to make man better and better, and uh, somehow spiritually be so spiritually good for him. But we know that only Christ can make man better and better, and education that's Christ-centered is the only thing that is really effective. And we have seen, have we not, in the 1960s when, see, colleges and universities weren't always open to just anybody. They were open to people who were going to be need that little extra education, like architects and doctors and dentists and people that ran cities, and I'm trying to think of what they're called. You know, the emergency and the floods and the fires and things like that. And then it became open to everybody, and we saw the young men and young women coming home from these colleges with less knowledge and less abilities, less wisdom than when they went. It was sort of like it had been dulled out of them or knocked out of them. They came home with dull eyes. They didn't know how to clean up after themselves, and they did not know how to work, but they were college educated, and that was the result of the liberal college education that they got. But this man, Booker T. Washington, his education was one about life. Second, at Hampton, for the first time, I learned what education was expected to do for an individual. Before going there, I had a good deal of the then rather prevalent idea among our people that to secure an education meant to have a good, easy time. And yes, we all noticed, didn't we, that people that were highly educated had more leisure, and they had nicer, more comforts, and little and more free time. But and of course that's natural to see that. He said education meant to have a good, easy time, free from all necessity for manual labor. At Hampton, I not only learned that it was not a disgrace to labor, but I learned to love labor, not alone for its financial value, but for labor's own sake, and for the independence and self-reliance which the ability to do something which the world wants done brings. At that institution, I got my first taste of what it meant to live a life of unselfishness, my first knowledge of the fact that the happiest individuals are those who do the most to make others useful and happy. I've read this part to you before. And so I wanted to read some of it again and tell you that in all labor there is profit, is what the proverb says. In all labor there is profit. And sometimes I'll walk past something that has been needed, a box of things that needs to be sorted through, or a bag of stuff that I had to put in a bag because I was clearing out a room for someone to stay in, and I never did get back to it. I'll just walk past it. I just see it after a while. And then one day I'll think, you know, I don't think anyone else is going to come in and clean that up. And I'll start cleaning it up. It doesn't seem like any progress in life. Like it's not the same as writing a newsletter or teaching a Bible class. It just doesn't seem to have that attraction to it. But there is something beautiful in it if you can learn to do it, if you can learn to sort something out, if you can learn to clean out a bookshelf, and if you're home for the first time in a long time because of the current political situation, then there is plenty to do at home. You can probably make it a smoother running place than ever before because of the fact that you don't have to get up and go somewhere else all the time. I was completely out of money when I graduated. In company with other Hampton students, I secured a place as a table waiter in a summer hotel in Connecticut and managed to borrow enough money with which to get there. I had not been in this hotel long before I found out that I knew practically nothing about waiting on a hotel table. And he talked about how he took an order and just walked away and forgot to bring something, and I'll read about it. I have read this before, but some of you that are just tuning in might not have gone back, and I didn't label everything. The head waiter, however, supposed that I was an accomplished waiter. He soon gave me charge of a table at which there sat 4 or 5 wealthy and rather aristocratic people. The ignorance of how to wait upon them was so apparent that they scolded me in such a severe manner that I became frightened and left their table, leaving them sitting there without food. As a result of this, I was reduced from the position of a waiter to that of a dish carrier. But I determined to learn the business of waiting, and did so within a few weeks, and was restored to my former position. I have had the satisfaction of being a guest in this hotel several times since I was a waiter there. At the close of the hotel season, I returned to my former home in Malden, and was elected to teach the colored school at that place. This was the beginning of the happiest periods of my life. I now felt that I had the opportunity to help the people of my hometown to a higher life. I felt from the first that mere book education was not all that the young people of that town needed. I began my work at 8 o'clock in the morning, and as a rule, I did not end it until 10 o'clock at night. In addition to the usual routine of teaching, I taught the pupils to comb their hair, to keep their hands and faces clean, as well as their clothing. I gave special attention to teaching them the proper use of the toothbrush and the bath. In all my teaching, I have watched carefully the influence of the toothbrush, and I am convinced that there are few single agencies of civilization that are more far-reaching. There were many of the older, now see, this is very, very similar to teaching your children at home. You teach them first how to look after their bodies, how to look after themselves, and how to have a happy disposition, how to wake up happy, and what to say when you wake up, and how to develop a positive, wonderful outlook on life. So I will read more of that to you later, and right now I want to show you a little bit about what's called a legend on a map, and later on I'll draw one. We used to use maps a lot in our home, and the children could make maps themselves and draw a legend and then go find things, give each other a map, kind of like a treasure map, and go find things. And the legend are all these little symbols on the map, and they tell you how to read the map. And the map is hard to read because it has all these different colored streets and roads and different colored areas. And so the legends are things like, here's a green road and a purple road, limited access, multi-lane highway, free or toll. Then there's the dotted line that's green, new road. The solid line that's red, other multi-lane highway. And the dotted red highway, principal highway, and just goes on. And so I'll read, and these all a symbol that goes with it, so that when you see a little airplane, there's a little airport there, and when you see a boat, you know that there's a harbor. So I'll just read some of them. This is a trans highway, a Lewis and Clark Trail highway, Great River Road, service area, city or town, urbanized area, national park system, national forest, BLM land, airport, building, foot trail, Native American tribal land, ranger station, rest area, tourist information, lakes, rivers, dams, deserts, etc. BLM land being Bureau of Land Management. So I wanted to explain that a little bit because I had read something about maps previously, so I'd like to do that for you now. And I want to talk a little bit now about a couple of things that I've written down here. My notes are a mess, aren't they? And that is, now remember I said that you can get a copy of that by Booker T. Washington from Dover publication, which is a little bit better for children, I think, for homeschool if you want to. I have a different edition. Now we're going to go, I hope we've done some homemaking, and I've talked about a few things that I've learned in homemaking, and it is barely routine, and it is repetitive, and that's why it's nice to have someone talk to you as we go. And so I'm going to talk about dealing with people at home, because we do have to do that, and there will be people in your life, and sometimes not so cheerful. There might not be so cheerful, and hopefully these are adults, but sometimes not. And that one thing that you can do to prevent the critic, to prevent the person that is mostly down on life all the time, always has a negative thing to say, the kind that like to languish in their no future, no hope beliefs. They just like to languish. You almost wish they'd go to that town you knew about where everybody was like that, and where they could nurture one another in their pessimistic outlook of no hope. Their no hope, like things are just bad and they're going to get worse no matter what happens. How would you like to be in a contest of some kind where you were making something and hoping to win a prize? And the coach, the person that was coaching you, or the teacher said to you, well, now one of you is going to win a prize, but things are going to get worse anyway, or things are going to be bad anyway. Would you like to play that game? Would you like to be involved in that with a coach? Like, what if you were in a military and you had a general that said, no matter who wins this war, things are going to be bad. Would you like to participate in that? Do you think you have confidence in that? Well, there are people like that. They may be in your home, they may be part of your life in some other way, but they are there, and we run into them all the time, don't we? And then there are those that seem to be monitoring you or criticizing you. If possible, spend as little time